Of course. It means diplomats cannot be arrested, or it exists because diplomats represent their entire species. When you insult a diplomat, you insult every single member of their race. When you call them cockroaches, you are saying that billions of humans are nothing more than pests to be exterminated. Hannah went pale. I did not mean, it does not matter what you meant. It matters what you said. Terry's voice cracked. Do you know what happens now? Earth's application for full coalition membership is dead. Trade agreements are in jeopardy. Scientific exchanges will stop. And every hostile faction in the galaxy just learned that humanity is isolated and unprotected. That is not my fault. It is entirely your fault. Terry slammed her hand on the table, making Hannah jump. You are 17 years old, not 7. You are a princess of the Velteron Empire. Your words carry weight whether you want them to or not. In another part of the city, in a small apartment filled with books and datapads, a young Velteron scholar named Minjay was doing research. He had spent the last 5 years studying human history and culture. Fascinated by this young species that had gone from primitive tribes to star travel in just a few thousand years, now he sat surrounded by holographic displays, showing human conflicts throughout history, the Mongol conquests, the World Wars, the Mars Rebellion, the First Contact War, battle after battle. Humans fighting against impossible odds and somehow surviving. He pulled up a specific file, the Battle of Terra Nova, where 3 human frigates held off an entire pirate fleet for 6 days until reinforcements arrived. The human casualties were 80%. But the colony survived. Another file, the Ganymede Siege, where human defenders fought in vacuum with failing life support for 72 hours straight. Half of them died. The rest never surrendered. Minjay leaned back, his mind racing. Princess Hannah had called humans primitive, but these records showed something else entirely. They showed a species that refused to quit, that adapted and learned and fought and survived through sheer determination. He began compiling a report. Someone needed to see this. Someone needed to understand what humanity really was. The next day, the Galactic Coalition Council met in emergency session. Elder Counselor Borum called the meeting to order with heavy strikes of his staff. We are here to discuss the incident from yesterday's proceedings, he said, and to address humanity's application for membership. Several delegates began speaking at once. Some demanded that the human delegation be recalled and forced to continue negotiations. Others suggested that humanity was too immature for coalition membership if their diplomats could not handle criticism. Minister Suho, the Velteran defense minister, stood to speak. He was a practical man who dealt in facts rather than politics. While we debate protocols and hurt feelings, he said, I have received reports from our border monitoring stations. 3 separate pirate groups have begun moving toward human territory. They monitored our proceedings yesterday. They know that humanity is now isolated from coalition protection. The chamber went quiet. Human colonies are about to come under attack, Suho continued. And we are sitting here arguing about whether a teenager's insults justify our inaction. I suggest we focus on what actually matters. Princess Hannah, sitting in the royal section, felt ice in her stomach. Pirates. But I thought human space was too well defended too. It was well defended when they had coalition backing. Terry said quietly. When raiders knew that attacking humans meant facing coalition response fleets. But now they see weakness. Opportunity. Minjay stood from the scholars section holding his datapad. Honored counselors, I have compiled research on human military history that I believe is relevant to this discussion. We do not need history lessons, one delegate said dismissively. We need to decide on policy. Elder Borum held up a hand. Let him speak. Minjay activated his presentation. Images filled the air above the council. Floor, battles, wars, conflicts spanning thousands of years of human history. Humans have been fighting for survival since they developed consciousness, Minjay said. They evolved on a death world where everything from the weather to the wildlife tried to kill them. They had no natural armor, no claws, no venom, just intelligence and stubbornness. He pulled up data on human physiology. Their bodies are designed for endurance. They can run prey to exhaustion over days. They can survive injuries that would kill most species. They have a psychological trait they call spite, where they will fight purely to prove someone wrong. "This is irrelevant," someone called out. "Is it?" Minjay pulled up recent data. 3 months ago, a human cargo ship was attacked by raiders. The ship was unarmed. The crew was 12 people. They fought the raiders using improvised weapons made from engine parts and mining equipment. 6 crew members died. The raiders lost to ships and retreated, looked around the chamber. "These are not primitives. These are survivors, and we just told them they are not welcome here." Minister Suho nodded slowly. "The scholar is correct. I reviewed the human military files this morning. Their technology may be less advanced, but their tactical innovation is remarkable. They win battles they should lose by doing things we would never consider." "Like what?" someone asked. "Like ramming enemy ships with their own vessels to disable them. Like evacuating all air from their ships to fight boarding parties in vacuum. Like staying at battle stations while their ships are literally falling apart around them." Suho pulled up his own data. There is a human saying, "Victory or death." They mean it literally. The council chamber filled with uncomfortable whispers. These were not the characteristics of primitive insects. These were the traits of a warrior species. Elder Borum struck his staff. "We will adjourn for the day. Delegates should review the information provided and return tomorrow with recommendations." He looked toward the royal section. "Princess Hannah, you will remain." After the others filed out, Hannah stood alone before the elder counselor. His ancient eyes regarded her with disappointment. "Do you understand what you have done?" he asked quietly. "I insulted the humans." "I know." "Terry, already you started a war?" Hannah's blood ran cold. "What?" "Perhaps not directly. Perhaps not intentionally. But your words will have consequences measured in lives. Human lives. Possibly Velteron lives, if we are drawn into the conflict." Borum leaned on his staff. "Power without wisdom is just destruction waiting to happen. You have power, child. You have yet to gain wisdom." "I did not know," Hannah whispered. "That is not an excuse. It is the problem." Borum turned away. "You may go, but think carefully about what it means to speak carelessly when people are listening." Hannah walked through the empty corridors, her mind spinning. She kept seeing Jinho's face, the calm way he had looked at her, the quiet dignity as he turned and walked away. She had expected anger. She had wanted anger. Anger she could dismiss, but his silence spoke louder than any words. She pulled up her personal data pad, began searching for information on Jinho. Military records, campaign histories, commendations. The file was extensive. There was a video clip from a battle 7 years ago. Jinho, younger and less scarred, pulling a wounded soldier from a burning ship, going back again and again, bringing out 5 people before the ship exploded. He was barely 25 years old in the footage. Hannah watched the video 3 times before she finally understood. This was not a primitive insect. This was someone who had already proven his worth in ways she could not imagine, and she had called him a cockroach. The colony world of Nova. Terra hung in space like a blue and green jewel. Home to 2 million human souls who had left Earth to build new lives among the stars. The planet was young in terms of colonization, only 15 years old. With cities still being built and farmland still being cleared, the people there were farmers, engineers, teachers, and families who wanted a fresh start. They were not prepared for what was coming. "Admiral," Aijin stood on the bridge of the destroyer Indomitable, watching the long-range sensors with growing concern. She was a veteran of 30 years in the human fleet, with iron-gray hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. Right now, those eyes were counting enemy ships. 47 confirmed contacts, her sensor officer reported. Raider configuration. Multiple species, but organized under a single command structure. "Raider Lord Kale," Haijin said quietly. It was not a question. Kale was infamous, a warlord who commanded the largest pirate confederation in this sector. He normally avoided human space because the cost was too high. But now, with humanity isolated from the coalition, the calculus had changed. "What are our assets?" she asked. Her tactical officer pulled up the display. 6 destroyers, including us. 8 frigates. 3 patrol boats. Against 47 raiders ranging from corvettes to at least 4 heavy cruisers. So we are outnumbered almost 4 to 1. Yes, ma'am. And their ships are better armed. Hyjin looked at the planet below. 2 million people, families, children, people who trusted the fleet to protect them. Send a message to the coalition. Request immediate assistance under the mutual defense protocols. Ma'am, we are not full members. The protocols do not send it anyway. Let them decide if their bureaucracy is worth more than 2 million lives. The message went out. Hours passed with no response. On Novaterra, Colony Administrator Jiwan watched the skies and tried not to panic. She had received the warning from Admiral Hajin an hour ago. Evacuate if possible. Prepare for siege if not. She looked at her screens showing the colony population distribution. The capital city held 800,000 people. The outlying settlements another 1,200,000. There was no way to evacuate everyone. No place to evacuate to. Get everyone into the shelters, she ordered. Deep as possible. Seal the blast doors. And pray. In the council chamber on Valterra, the emergency message from Novaterra played on the main display. A young human woman, barely holding herself together, speaking into a camera. This is Colony Administrator Jiwan of Novaterra. We are under attack by raider forces. 47 ships. We have requested coalition assistance, but received no response. Our defense fleet is engaging the enemy but is severely outnumbered. If anyone is receiving this, we have 2 million civilians here. Women, children, families. Please, we need help. The message ended. The council chamber was silent. Princess Hannah sat frozen in her seat, staring at the screen. 2 million people. The number was incomprehensible. That was more than lived in the entire Velteron Royal District. And they were all in danger because humanity had no coalition support. Because the diplomatic mission had failed. Because she had mocked their representative and driven him away. We must send assistance, Minister Suho said immediately. This falls under humanitarian aid protocols. The protocols require a majority vote, another delegate countered. And the debate period is 72 hours minimum. 72 hours? Those people will be dead in 72 hours. Then perhaps humanity should have maintained better diplomatic relations, the delegate said coldly. Hannah felt sick. Elder Counselor Borum stood slowly. We will vote immediately on emergency aid measures. But I suspect we all know this will take time. Time those humans do not have. In space above Novaterra, the battle had begun. Admiral Hajin's fleet moved in a defensive formation around the planet, using the orbital stations as cover. The raiders came in waves, testing the defenses, probing for weaknesses. Concentrate fire on their lead elements, Hyjin ordered. Make them pay for every meter. The Indomitable's railguns spoke, hurling metal at relativistic speeds. 2 raider corvettes exploded. 3 more broke off, damaged, but there were so many more behind them. A frigate called Defiant took 3 direct hits and went dark. Life pods began ejecting as the crew abandoned ship. Raiders moved to intercept the pods, picking them off like shooting gallery targets. All ships cover those pods, Hyjin snapped. No one gets left behind. The destroyer Soul broke formation to shield the escape pods with its own hull. Railgun fire tore into its armor. Warning alarms screamed across the bridge. But the crew held position until every pod was recovered. Jinho arrived at the fleet staging area 6 hours into the battle. He had been on a transport heading back to Earth when the distress call came through. He ordered the pilot to divert immediately. Commander Doyen met him at the airlock. Your resignation is not processed yet. Technically, you are still on active duty, Kujino said flatly. Get me a ship. The only thing available is a frigate, half-repaired, outdated weapons systems, and a skeleton crew. I will take it. Doyon gripped his shoulder. The council is still debating whether to help. We are alone out there. Then we fight alone. It would not be the first time. Jinho headed toward the hangar. What is the ship's name? Resolute. Ginho smiled grimly. Perfect. The frigate Resolute was exactly as advertised. Old, battle-scarred, and held together with hope and welding seals. The crew was 16 people, mostly volunteers, who had heard about the battle and refused to sit it out. They were engineers, cargo handlers, and off-duty personnel. None of them had to be here. All of them chose to be. Take us in, Ginho ordered, as he settled into the captain's chair. Full burn. Get us to Novatara before there is nothing left to save. The journey took 18 hours at maximum speed. When they arrived, the battle had turned into a brutal grind. The human fleet had been pushed back to close orbit over the planet. 5 ships had been destroyed. 6 more were severely damaged. The raiders controlled most of the orbital space, but the humans were still fighting.
This is Resolute to Fleet Command, Jinho transmitted.
We are entering the engagement zone. Where do you need us? Admiral Hedgen's voice came back, strained and tired. Ginho, what are you doing here? My job, ma'am. Where do you need us? There was a pause. Then, the raiders are concentrating on the evacuation transports at coordinates 774. We do not have enough ships to protect them. If they break through, they will massacre the civilian ships. Understood. We are on our way. Ginho looked at his small crew. They looked back at him with steady eyes. They knew what this meant. A frigate against multiple raider ships. The odds were not good. Anyone wants to stay behind? Now's the time, Jinho said quietly. No one moved. All right then. Battle stations. Let us show these raiders what humans do when someone threatens our families. The Resolute accelerated toward the evacuation zone. Ahead, 4 raider cruisers were moving to intercept the slow, vulnerable transport ships loaded with colonists, women, children, the elderly. People who could not fight back. The raiders opened fire. The transports had no weapons, no real shields. They would be slaughtered. Jinho's hands flew over the controls. Helm, put us between the raiders and those transports. Engineering, divert everything to forward shields. Weapons, get me firing solutions on all 4 targets. Sir, we cannot win against 4 cruisers, his weapons officer said. We do not need to win. We just need to buy time. Ginho's voice was calm. They want those transports. They have to go through us to get them. The Resolute slid into position, a tiny frigate against 4 massive warships. The difference in size was absurd. It was like a guard dog standing against 4 bears. The raiders opened fire. The frigate's shields lit up like a star, absorbing impact after impact. Alarms screamed. The hull groaned. But the ship held together. Return fire, Ginho ordered. Target their weapon systems. We do not need to kill them. We just need to slow them down. The Resolute's railguns spoke. Precise shots, carefully aimed, hitting weapon ports and sensor arrays. One raider lost its forward batteries. Another had its targeting systems damaged. But there were 4 of them, and only 1 Resolute. The math was brutal and simple. Hull breach on decks 2 and 3, damage control reported. Sealing sections. We lost a crew. Jinho's jaw tightened. Keep firing. Transports were moving away, gaining distance. Every second the Resolute survived was another second for civilians to escape. The frigate shuddered under another massive impact. The shields were failing. One more hit would break through. Sir, our reactor is critical, engineering reported. We have maybe 2 minutes before core breach. Ginho looked at his tactical display. The transports were almost clear, almost safe. He looked at his crew, these people who had volunteered to stand between civilians and death. Helm, full burn. Ram, the lead cruiser, sir? You heard me. If we are going down anyway, we take one of them with us. Engineering, set the reactor to overload on impact. Make it count. The crew did not argue. They just worked. The Resolute turned toward the massive raider cruiser and accelerated. The raiders realized what was happening too late. They tried to maneuver, but the frigate was already committed. The small ship crashed into the cruiser's midsection like a bullet. The reactor went critical. The explosion lit up space like a second sun. When it cleared, both ships were gone. The Raider cruiser was torn in half. The Resolute was simply gone, scattered atoms in space. But the transports escaped. 20,000 civilians lived because 16 people chose to die. On Veltara, in the council chamber, they watched it happen in real time. Long-range sensors had captured everything. The small frigate. The impossible stand. The final sacrifice. The chamber was absolutely silent. The explosion faded from the screens, leaving only debris and silence. In the Galactic Coalition Council chamber, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They had just watched 16 humans choose to die so that others could live. Princess Hannah sat frozen in her seat, her hands gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. She could not stop seeing it. The small frigate turning toward the massive cruiser, the deliberate acceleration. The light of the explosion? Gone. Just gone. The transports are clear, Minister Suho reported quietly, breaking the silence. 20,000 civilians evacuated safely. The cost of an entire ship and crew, someone said. Out, they volunteered. Elder Counselor Borum replied. His ancient voice was heavy with something Hannah had never heard from him before. Shame. They volunteered because we failed them. Because we sat here debating protocols while people died. On the screens, the battle continued. The human fleet was down to 8 operational ships now, still fighting against more than 30 raiders. They were losing, slowly but steadily. And the council was still debating whether to help. We must vote on intervention now, Suho insisted. This has gone on long enough. The proper procedures must be followed, another delegate argued. We cannot set a precedent of enough. Everyone turned to stare at Elder Borum. The ancient counselor had stood, slamming his staff against the floor with enough force to crack the stone. His eyes blazed with fury. I've served on this council for 93 years, he said, his voice shaking. I have seen empires rise and fall. I have witnessed first contact with 17 species. I have negotiated peace treaties and trade agreements that shaped the galaxy. And never in all those years have I been so ashamed of this body as I am right now. The chamber was deathly quiet. We are watching people die on those screens, Borum continued. Not warriors. Not soldiers, farmers, teachers, children. And we sit here debating procedure. The humans asked for nothing but respect and membership. We denied them. They asked for help protecting their families. We denied them. And now we are watching them die alone. He looked around at the assembled delegates. What does that make us? What have we become when we value our rules more than lives? No one answered. I call for an immediate vote on emergency military intervention, Borum said. All in favor? Hands began to rise, slowly at first, then faster. 2/3 of the council voted yes. It was enough. Now, dispatch the Coalition Rapid Response Fleet to Novaterra immediately, Borum ordered. And may whatever gods we pray to forgive us for taking this long. But even as the orders went out, everyone in the chamber knew the truth. The fleet would take days to arrive. The humans would have to survive alone until then. If they could survive at all, across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, the footage of the battle was spreading. A war correspondent named Yunji had been covering the frontier conflicts when the attack on Novaterra began. She had been broadcasting live from an observation station, capturing everything with her cameras. Now her footage was being shown on news networks everywhere. The desperate defense. The impossible odds. The small frigate making its final stand. She stood in front of her camera now. On a transport ship full of refugees from Novaterra, behind her, children slept in their parents' arms. Exhausted from terror and tears. This is Yunji reporting from Transport 7, she said quietly. We are carrying 5,000 colonists evacuated from Novaterra during the battle. They are alive because the human fleet bought them time to escape. Ships like the Resolute, which sacrificed itself to save this transport and others like it. She gestured to a young mother holding a baby. This is my Yan. She is 26 years old. She worked as a teacher on Nova Terra. Her husband was in the Colony Defense Force. She has not heard from him in 18 hours. Psst. The camera focused on Mion's face. She was crying silently, holding her child close. That frigate that exploded, Mayan whispered. Those people died for us. For my baby. I do not even know their names. Youngi's voice was thick with emotion. Their names were Gingho, Taeyeon, Sujin, Kungmin-jiwoo, Saman, Daeyoon, Nari, Minho, Yaji, Sunghoon, Bora, Junho, Hanyol, Woojin, and Minji, 16 volunteers who had 1 hour's notice before jumping into a barely functional ship and flying into hell. They knew they would probably die. They went anyway. The footage cut to the explosion again. The bright flash, the debris. The Galactic Coalition is still debating whether to help, Yunji said. But the humans are not debating. They are fighting. They are dying. And they are saving everyone they can, even when no one is coming to save them. The broadcast ended, but the footage kept spreading. Within hours, it had reached billions across Coalition space. People watched. And people began to question in the royal quarters on Veltara. Princess Hannah sat alone in darkness, watching the footage again and again. Her cousin Terry had left hours ago, called away to emergency diplomatic sessions. Hannah was grateful for the solitude. She did not want anyone to see her cry, but she could not stop the tears. She pulled up the personnel. Files on the Resolute's crew. 16 people. The oldest was 47. The youngest was 19. They had families, dreams, futures. Ginho had been the captain. His file was extensive. Born on Earth, joined the military at 18, fought in 7 campaigns. Received the Silver Star for Valor 3 times. The Medal of Honor once. Recommended for diplomatic service because of his calm demeanor and ability to find peaceful solutions. She had called him a cockroach. Hannah's hands shook as she read through the other files. Taeyeon, the engineer, had 2 daughters. Sujin, the weapons officer, was supposed to get married next month. Kangmin, the pilot, had just sent a message to his mother saying he would visit soon. They were gone now. All of them. Gone because they chose to stand between death and innocent people. There was a soft chime at her door. Hannah wiped her eyes quickly. Enter. It was Kyung, Ambassador Terry's advisor. He was an older Velteron, scholarly and gentle. He carried a datapad. Princess, I apologize for the intrusion, he said. But I have been compiling research that I believe you should see. I do not want to see anything right now. I understand, but please. He set the datapad on her table. This is a comprehensive study of human culture and history. I have been working on it for weeks, since before the diplomatic incident. I think it might help you understand what you were seeing on those screens. Hannah looked at the datapad but did not reach for it. Kyung bowed and left quietly. For a long time, Hannah just sat there. Then slowly she picked up the pad and began to read. The report was massive. Thousands of pages of human history, culture, art, and philosophy. Kyung had documented everything from their earliest civilizations to their expansion into space. She read about the human concept of sacrifice, how they told stories of people giving their lives for others and called them heroes, how they built monuments to remember the fallen, how they had a saying, "Greater love has no one than this," that someone lay down their life for their friends. She read about their wars, how they had fought each other for thousands of years, learning hard lessons about the cost of conflict, how they had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times, but also how they had learned, eventually, to work together. She read about their art and music, the way they used creativity to process pain and find meaning in suffering, songs about loss and hope, paintings of beauty found in darkness, poetry about the strength to continue when everything seemed hopeless. And she read their philosophies, how they debated the nature of good and evil, how they struggled with questions of justice and mercy, how they valued the individual while recognizing the importance of community hours passed. Dawn light began filtering through her windows. Hannah was still reading. There was a section on human military psychology. Why they fought. Why they kept fighting when defeat seemed certain. A quote from an ancient human general caught her eye. "I have not yet begun to fight," said when his ship was sinking, and everyone thought he would surrender. "He went on to win the battle." Another quote from a human who survived a death camp during one of their darkest periods. "Everything can be taken from a person but one thing. The last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances." Hannah set down the datapad, her mind reeling. This was not the primitive species she had imagined. These were people who had fought through hell and came out the other side, still believing in something better. Still hoping. Still sacrificing for each other. She pulled up the footage from Nova Terra again. Watched the Resolute's final moments. But this time, she saw it differently. Not as a desperate act of inferior beings, but as a choice. A conscious decision to value other lives more than their own. 16 people had looked at certain death, and chosen it anyway, so that thousands could live. That was not primitive. That was not savage. That was the kind of nobility that should be celebrated across the galaxy. Hannah stood and walked to her window, looking out at the city below. The council was still debating aid protocols. Politicians were still arguing about procedures and precedents. While humans died protecting their families, she made a decision. An hour later, Hannah stood at the entrance to the council chamber. Ambassador Terry tried to stop her. "Hannah, the session is not open to observers right now." "You cannot just—" "I am not an observer," Hannah said firmly. "I am a member of the Velteron royal family. I have the right to address the council on matters of importance to my people." "What are you doing?" "What I should have done from the beginning. Speaking with wisdom instead of arrogance." Hannah walked past her cousin into the chamber. The debate stopped as she entered. Elder Counselor Borum looked surprised, but gestured for her to approach the speaker's platform. Hannah stood where Jinho had stood just days ago. She looked at the assembled delegates, some curious, some annoyed at the interruption. "Honored counselors," she began, her voice steady despite her fear. "I stand before you to take full responsibility for the crisis at Nova Terra." The council chamber fell silent at Princess Hannah's words. She stood at the speaker's platform, her hands trembling slightly, but her voice steady. "My words drove the human delegation away," she continued. "My arrogance and ignorance created the diplomatic crisis that left humanity isolated, and that isolation led directly to the attack on Nova Terra. The blood of everyone who died in that battle is on my hands." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Some delegates looked uncomfortable, others angry. Elder Council. Lord Borum simply watched with his ancient knowing eyes. "I called humans primitive," Hannah said. "I called them insects. I mocked their technology and their determination. I did this because I saw only surface details and assumed I understood everything. I was wrong." She activated the chamber's main display, showing footage from Nova Terra, the desperate battles, the sacrifices, the Resolute's final moments. "This is what humans do when their families are threatened," Hannah said. "They fight with everything they have. They sacrifice themselves without hesitation. They stand between death and the innocent, knowing they will probably die, and they stand anyway." She pulled up Kuhn's research, displaying it across multiple screens. Human history, human culture, human achievement. "We have been traveling the stars for 10,000 years, Hannah said. Humans have been in space for barely 200, but in that short time, they have built colonies on dozens of worlds. They have developed technologies through pure determination. They have survived first contact with hostile species. They have thrived." She looked around the chamber. "And they did it all without our help. Without our advanced technology, without our protection. They did it through sheer stubborn refusal to quit." Minister Suho was nodding. Others were leaning forward, listening carefully now. "I propose that this council immediately grant humanity not just full membership, but formal alliance status," Hannah said. "We should recognize them as equals and partners." Not because they have the best technology or the biggest fleet, but because they have proven their character in the most profound way possible. Through sacrifice for others, the chamber erupted in discussion. But before a vote could be called, an alert sounded. All eyes turned to the tactical displays. "Report," Elder Borum commanded. "Long-range sensors show a coalition rapid response fleet entering the Nova Terra system," an officer reported. "They are engaging the Raider forces and the human fleet. Still fighting? Down to 4 operational ships, but still fighting?" Hannah watched the tactical display, her heart in her throat. 4 ships. Out of the original 14? So many lost. So many dead. "Wait," the tactical officer said. "I am getting escape pod signals. Lots of them. Scattered across the battle zone. From which ships?" "All of them, including the Resolute." The chamber went absolutely still. The Resolute had been destroyed. Everyone had watched it explode. But escape pods? That meant survivors. "How many signals?" Borum asked quietly. 14 pods. Multiple life signs in each. I am reading. Approximately 83 survivors from various destroyed human vessels. Hannah felt tears on her face. Ginho might be alive. He might have survived. "A coalition rescue ship is moving to recover them now," the officer continued. "We should have confirmation within the hour." The hour passed with agonizing slowness. Hannah could not leave the chamber. She stood in the gallery section, watching the displays, waiting for news. Ambassador Terry joined her, putting a gentle hand on her shoulder. Finally, the report came through. Dr. Sora, a human physician aboard the Coalition rescue vessel, appeared on the main display. She looked exhausted but relieved. "We have recovered 83 survivors from the battle," she reported. "Multiple injuries ranging from minor to critical. We are stabilizing them now, Captain Jinho." Borum asked. "Is he among them?" Dr. Sora hesitated. "Yes, but his condition is critical. He was in the reactor room when they initiated the overload. His crew got him to an escape pod, but he took a lot of radiation exposure. We have him in medical stasis." But she shook her head. "I cannot make any promises." Hannah closed her eyes, feeling sick. He had survived the explosion only to be dying from radiation. All because he had chosen to fight when everyone else had abandoned humanity. "Where are you taking the survivors?" Terry asked. "Coalition Medical Station 7. It has the best trauma facilities in this sector." Hannah turned to her cousin. "I need to go there. Hannah, I need to see him. I need to. I have to try to make this right." Hannah's voice broke. "Please." Terry looked at her cousin for a long moment, then nodded. "I will arrange transport." The medical station was a massive structure orbiting a gas giant, all white metal and sterile lighting. Hannah arrived with Terry 12 hours after the survivors were brought aboard. The halls were quiet except for the hum of medical equipment. Dr. Sora met them outside the main trauma ward. She was a small woman with kind eyes and tired hands. "Most of the survivors will make full recoveries," she said. "But it will take time. These people fought for 3 days straight with minimal rest. Some have injuries that will end their military careers." "And Captain Jinho?" Hannah asked quietly. Dr. Sora led them down a corridor to a private room. Through the window, Hannah could see Jinho lying in a medical bed surrounded by machines. His skin was pale, his breathing assisted by tubes. Monitors showed his vital signs, all of them concerning. "The radiation damage is extensive," Dr. Sora said. "We are doing everything we can, but human medicine has limits. He needs treatments we simply do not have available here." "What about Coalition medical technology?" Terry asked. "The regeneration treatments? Those are not approved for use on humans yet. The bureaucracy could take months." Hannah stared through the window at the man she had mocked. He looked smaller somehow, vulnerable. Not the calm, dignified figure who had walked away from her insults. Just a man who had given everything to protect others. "I want to see him," Hannah said. "When he wakes up?" "If he wakes up," Dr. Sora corrected gently. "Princess, you should prepare yourself when he wakes up," Hannah repeated firmly. "I will wait however long it takes." She did wait. For 3 days, Hannah sat in a chair outside Jinho's room, refusing to leave except for brief breaks. She read reports on the battle, learned the names of everyone who died, watched footage of the survivors being rescued. On the 4th day, Dr. Sora came to her looking surprised. He is awake. The treatments are working better than we hoped. He is asking for updates on his crew. Hannah stood, suddenly nervous. Can I see him? For a few minutes. He is still very weak. The room smelled of antiseptic and medical equipment. Ginho was sitting up slightly in bed, his eyes clear but tired. When he saw Hannah, his expression did not change. Just that same calm, steady gaze. Princess, he said quietly. I did not expect visitors. Hannah approached the bed slowly. She had practiced what to say 1,000 times. Now all the words fled. I am sorry, she finally whispered. For what I said? For what I caused? For everything. Ginho watched her for a long moment. Why are you here? Because I was wrong. About you. About your people. About everything. Hannah's voice shook. I watched what happened at Nova Terra. I saw what you did. What your crew did. All those people who died because I drove you away from the peace talks. They died because raiders attacked, Ginho said. Not because of you. The raiders attacked because humanity was isolated. Because I insulted you and ruined the diplomatic mission. Because I called you a cockroach and you walked away. Ginho was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Why did you think we were weak? The question was not accusatory, just curious. Genuinely wanting to understand, Hannah sat down in the chair beside his bed. I saw only your technology. Your ships are slower than ours. Your weapons less powerful. Your cities less advanced. I looked at the surface and thought I understood everything. And now I understand that strength is not about having the best weapons. It is about what you are willing to sacrifice. What you are willing to endure. Your people have that strength in abundance. She looked at him. You proved that at Nova Terra. My crew proved that. And the crews of every ship that fought there. And the civilians who evacuated each other instead of panicking. And the medics who stayed at their posts while the colony was being bombed. Ginho shifted slightly in bed, wincing. Humans are not special. We just refuse to quit. That is special, Hannah said quietly. That is exactly what makes you special. They sat in silence for a moment. Then Ginho asked, What happened with the council? Did they finally send help? Yes. The rapid response fleet arrived and drove off the raiders. Nova Terra is safe. Casualties were heavy, but the colony survived. Hannah took a breath. And the council voted. Unanimous decision. Humanity has been granted full membership and formal alliance status. Jinho's eyebrows rose slightly. Unanimous. I spoke before the council. Took responsibility for my actions. Proposed the alliance myself. And I showed them everything. The battle footage. The sacrifices. The truth about who humans really are. She smiled sadly. Turns out when people see actual evidence, instead of just assumptions, they reach very different conclusions. You did that? Why? Because it was right. Because I caused this problem, and I needed to fix it. And because, Hannah's voice dropped, because 16 people died on your ship. 16 volunteers who had families and futures, and I needed to make sure their sacrifice meant something. Jinho was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Thank you. I do not deserve thanks. I deserve blame, maybe. But you also deserve credit for admitting you were wrong and trying to fix it. Most people never do that. Jinho looked at her seriously. What you said in the council chamber hurt. Not just because it was insulting, but because it was dismissive. You looked at everything humans have accomplished and saw nothing worth respecting. I know. I was blind and arrogant. But you learned. You changed your mind when presented with evidence. You took responsibility for your mistakes. He smiled slightly. Those are rare qualities, even among people much older than 17. Hannah felt tears again. Your crew died because of me. My crew died because they chose to save 20,000 civilians. They made that choice freely, knowing the cost. Honor their decision by remembering what they fought for. Jinho's voice was gentle but firm. Do not turn their sacrifice into guilt. Turn it into understanding. Hana nodded, unable to speak. Over the next weeks, Ginho recovered slowly. Hana visited often, bringing reports from the Council and updates on the integration of humanity into coalition operations. They talked about politics and culture and the future of galactic relations. They also talked about war, about loss, about the weight of command and the cost of decisions. Ginho taught her about human military history, not the dates and battles, but the lessons learned, why they fought, when they chose peace, how they balanced strength with mercy. Hana began her own military training, much to her family's surprise. She wanted to understand what Jinho and his crew had faced, what it meant to stand a post, to make hard decisions, to value duty over comfort. 3 months after the battle, Jinho was cleared to return to duty. The Council offered him any position he wanted. He chose to return to diplomatic service as Earth's first coalition ambassador the day he took his new post. There was a ceremony in the Grand Council chamber, the same room where Hana had mocked him months before. Now they stood side by side as Elder Counselor Borum formally recognized the alliance between humanity and the coalition. Ambassador Jinho will work closely with Princess Hana, who has agreed to serve as liaison between the Velteron Empire and human territories, Borum announced. Together, they will coordinate joint defense initiatives and cultural exchanges. After the ceremony, Hana and Jinho stood on the balcony, overlooking the city. The stars were bright overhead, millions of them, representing infinite possibilities. Are you sure you want to work with me? Hana asked. After everything? Ginho smiled. Everyone deserves a second chance. You used yours well. I have a lot to learn still. We all do. That is the point. He looked up at the stars. Humans spent thousands of years fighting each other before we finally learned to cooperate. We made every possible mistake. But we kept learning, kept trying. That is what matters. The trying, the growing, the refusing to stay the same when staying the same means staying wrong. Ginho glanced at her. You could have stayed arrogant, blamed others, made excuses. You chose to change instead. That takes real courage. Hana looked out at the city, thinking about everything that had happened. The insults, the battle, the losses, the lessons learned in blood and sacrifice. I want to build something better, she said quietly. A galaxy where species work together instead of looking down on each other, where strength means protecting others, not dominating them. That is a good dream. Will you help me make it real? Ginho offered his hand. Partners? Hana shook it firmly. Partners. They stood together on the balcony, human and alien, former enemies, now allies, looking toward a future they would build together. Behind them, in the council chamber, diplomats from dozens of species gathered to discuss cooperation and peace. And somewhere, in the darkness of space, among the stars that humanity was still learning to navigate, the light of that cooperation began to spread, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple choice to stand together, the choice that Jinho had made when he walked away with dignity instead of anger, the choice Hana made when she admitted her mistakes and worked to fix them, the choice that 83 survivors and hundreds of fallen made when they stood between death and innocent lives, the choice to be better, to do better, to build something worth the sacrifices that made it possible. That was the real strength. Not in the weapons or the ships or the technology, but in the choice to stand for something greater than yourself, even when it would be easier to walk away, especially when it would be easier to walk away.